Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take, huge piles of research and really boil them down into insights you can actually use. Today, we're peeling back the layers on something absolutely vital in construction. We're talking compliance management, and specifically, that kind of hidden danger on the job site expired certifications. We did all the sources you sent over stuff detailing, the strict OSHA rules, these hidden admin risks, and some pretty surprising stats.
Yeah.
Our mission, to really unpack how one simple expired card sitting in someone's wallet can, spiral into $1 million disaster. And importantly, what you need to do, like right now, to stop that from happening.
Yeah, and it's important to get the scale here. Construction. It's high stakes, high growth. We're looking at U.S. spending hitting maybe $1.8 trillion by 2026.
Wow, that's huge.
It is, and this whole industry runs on speed, on getting things built. But the absolute bedrock, the thing holding it all up, is safety. So managing compliance, keeping track of literally hundreds of different certifications, OSHA 10, OSHA 30, CDLs, those really critical ones like NCCCO for our crane operators. It turns into this massive, really complex job for every single company.
And that's where the problems start, right? When that complexity bumps up against, human error. The source material laid out this really clear scenario. Picture a key piece of equipment, maybe a big crane. Operator seems fine, looks qualified. But, months ago, the site supervisor, totally swamped with paperwork, just missed it. The operator's NCCCO card had actually expired. Then, boom. A split-second mistake happens, and that little administrative slip, it turns a normal day into a potential fatality. That missed date is the hidden risk we're really digging into. Okay, so let's unpack the rules around this.
Right. To really feel the weight of that scenario, you got to look at the actual law. OSHA mandates are, they're pretty much ironclad. Employers must ensure they have competent, trained personnel, that's the phrase, for every single hazardous task. So putting someone unqualified on a job, even if it's an accident because their card lapsed, OSHA sees that as a serious violation the second they start work.
Okay, that brings us straight to maybe a tricky point, especially with the most common cards, like the OSHA 10 or 30-hour ones.
Yeah.
I think this confuses a lot of managers. What's kind of fascinating, or maybe confusing, is that federal OSHA guidelines. Technically, they say those specific cards are valid, indefinitely.
Yeah.
But that's just the technical part.
Exactly, and that technicality. Often it doesn't mean much in the real world of construction, especially when it comes to liability. So while Uncle Sam might not slap an expiry date on it federally, you've got employers, states think New York, Nevada, and definitely the big unions, they all step in. They enforce mandatory renewals, usually every 3 to 5 years.
Why do that? If the federal card technically lasts forever, why make people renew?
2 big reasons: liability and effectiveness. Construction tech, the standards, the hazards, they change fast. If something goes wrong, no insurance adjuster, no lawyer, no court is going to be happy with training that's 5 years old on a site with brand new risks. So that renewal, it keeps skills fresh, makes sure workers know about new gear or procedures, and, this is key, it shows the company is doing its due diligence. That's your defense if there's an incident.
Got it. So those 3 to 5 year rules, they're basically the practical standard, driven more by industry needs and insurance than just the federal paperwork.
Precisely. And then, of course, you've got the really specialized certs. Those have zero wiggle room. Think NCCCO for crane operators again, or CDLs for the heavy equipment drivers. These are often tied to specific regulators, state DMVs, really complex machinery. They demand fixed renewals often every year or two because the risks involved. So high that you absolutely need continuous documented proof that the person knows what they're doing. Non-negotiable.
And if that proof, that certification lapses, the financial hit can be, staggering. The sources laid out some serious fines, designed to make companies pay attention, right?
Oh, absolutely. Penalties for what OSHA calls a serious infraction. They start immediately at $16,550 per instance.
Per instance. Okay, that sounds like it could add up incredibly fast.
It really does. That per instance is crucial. And those costs climb steeply. If OSHA decides the lapse was willful or repeated, meaning you knew or should have known, those fines jump way up. We're talking $161,323 per offense. And let's connect this to the big picture. Imagine a company just, ignoring basic safety stuff like proper scaffold training or fall protection, which is super regulated under 29 CFR 1926.503. If that lapse, that failure to train properly, is linked to a worker fatality, the fines can easily balloon into the millions.
Wow. So the second you let an unqualified worker even accidentally onto that job site, you're not just breaking a rule, you're basically opening the door to potentially massive financial risk.
And the sad statistics really show why the enforcement is so tough. Construction, it's still America's deadliest industry, period. In 2023 alone, 1,075 people lost their lives on construction sites. That number was up sharply, like 7.6% from the year before. It's actually the highest death toll since way back in 2011.
That's grim. And it's not always some bizarre accident, is it? The sources said firefalls, getting struck by objects, equipment issues, those account for almost two-thirds of the deaths. But here's the tricky part with the data, something you mentioned earlier. OSHA doesn't specifically track accidents as, caused by expired credentials. So the link isn't always obvious in the official reports.
That's right. And that lack of a specific category, it kind of hides the true cost of just simple administrative failures. But, the correlation, it's pretty hard to ignore. When training is out of date or maybe wasn't adequate to begin with, that basic awareness of hazards just fades. And that directly links to more injuries. The sources pointed to this really chilling stat from 2014. Nearly 800 contractor deaths weren't tied to faulty gear, but specifically to inadequate or, crucially, outdated safety prep.
So it's like a slow erosion of knowledge that leads to the failure point. We saw that happen in a really public way with the Seattle crane collapse in 2022, right? 3 people died in that one.
Yeah, that case is unfortunately a textbook example of what we're talking about. High stakes. The investigation found that the incident was partly driven by the operator having a lapsed NCCCO certification. That admin failure, missing that critical renewal, it led directly to $1.2 million in OSHA fines.
Ouch.
And the investigation concluded that the lack of recent certified training played a role in key mistakes made during that lift.
So that one missed date didn't just cost lives and trigger huge fines. It hurt the business itself too, didn't it?
Absolutely. Expired certs, they can inflate your insurance premiums easily 20, maybe 30% almost overnight after an incident. And forget about productivity. Site investigations can shut things down for weeks, even months. Huge delays, huge reputational damage.
Okay, so we've got the tragedy, the massive financial penalties. But the sources seem to point towards something almost boringly simple as the main culprit. The way these documents are actually managed. Why, in a trillion-dollar industry like this, are companies still using systems that let these critical dates just slip through the cracks?
Well, because manual tracking, using spreadsheets, paper files, it's basically, as one source put it, a liability landmine in this kind of environment. I mean, think about a construction manager's reality. Crews coming and going, subcontractors rotating in and out, and maybe 50-plus different certification types to track for every single person, relying on shared Excel sheets, maybe physical folders, email reminders. It's almost guaranteed to fail systemically at some point.
Guaranteed to fail.
Wow. And we can actually quantify those failings. Human error, that's the big one, responsible for causing about 30% of all certification lapses. We're talking simple things. An admin misses an email reminder, forgets to update one cell in a giant spreadsheet, misfiles a physical card copy. Plus, you get delays, inconsistent records. It's messy. And get this, nearly half of construction managers admit they're still using paper for some of this critical tracking data.
30% caused by human error.
Yeah.
That's huge. Is it just people forgetting, or is the system itself just broken, not built for the speed and complexity of a modern job site?
I'd say it's mostly the latter. A spreadsheet might seem okay for a small team, maybe 50 people, but 500. We're trying to confirm someone's status right now before they start a critical task. Forget it. There was this one really stark example in the sources. A company got hit with $250,000 in penalties. An inspection found that a shocking 15% of their workers had expired OSHA cards.
15%.
Yeah. And the root cause, it was traced back entirely to a glitch in a shared Excel sheet. It just stopped updating correctly and nobody noticed until OSHA showed up.
$250,000 down the drain because of a spreadsheet glitch. Okay, that definitely proves the point. The old system isn't just inefficient, it's a massive measurable liability. It exists purely because the tools aren't up to the job. So what are these modern solutions doing differently? How do they fix what the spreadsheet can't?
This is where it gets interesting, where compliance stops being just a headache and actually becomes, well, a competitive edge. Automated systems basically tackle the root problems, human error and that documentation chaos. They digitize everything and, crucially, link it to real-time checks.
Okay, the sources mentioned technologies like CertLock, sort of as an example of this modern approach. So let's talk specifics. Functionality. What are the key features that directly kill that risk we've been discussing?
There are really 3 critical things, game changers. First, automated expiration notifications. The system scans the database constantly, not just once a month when someone remembers and sends out proactive alerts, usually 90, 60, and 30 days before a cert expires. The goal is to stop the lapse before it happens.
Okay, that makes sense. Prevent the fire instead of putting it out. What else?
Second, and this is huge for the job site, instant verification. Think about the difference. A supervisor holding up a whole crew for 5 minutes while they call the office to check a card versus them just scanning a QR code on a badge or helmet sticker with a mobile app. Takes 2 seconds. For those high-stakes certs like CDL or NCCCO, the app can instantly check against integrated external databases. So you know the card's legit and the status is current. Right there, right then.
That speed has got to be vital during an internal audit, or definitely during a surprise OSHA visit. What about the reporting side, managing all that data?
That's the third key piece. Audit-ready reporting. These automated systems have dashboards. They immediately flag any high-risk gaps like an expiring crane operator cert next week. And they can generate comprehensive compliance reports totally ready for an audit, literally with one click. We saw data showing firms using these kinds of automated tools reported something like 40% fewer violations. That reduction, that's your tangible ROI. It potentially saves millions in fines, avoided investigations, lower insurance premiums.
40% fewer violations. That's serious risk mitigation. Okay, so that's the tech solution, but what does this mean for you listening right now? Don't wait for that spreadsheet glitch or, worse, an incident. We've pulled together the key steps straight from the source's checklist for compliance confidence to audit your own certification game today. Okay, first step, inventory everything. And I mean everything. List every single worker's active credentials, OSHA, CDL, NCCCO, welder certs, whatever they need. Get those expiration dates down. Your goal has to be 100% coverage. Any gap is where the liability creeps in. Second, assess those renewal cycles. Don't just look at the card state. Cross-check against your state rules, your company policy, union agreements, especially those internal 3 to 5 year rules for OSHA refreshers we talked about. You need to meet the highest standard that applies to you, not just the federal minimum. Third, and this is maybe the toughest transition, but the most important, ditch the manual mayhem. Seriously. If you're still leaning on spreadsheets or paper files for this critical data, you have to look at migrating to automated tools. Now, why?
Because you need to eliminate that 30% human error factor. Full stop. Fourth step, train your team. And document it religiously. Schedule those refreshers, especially for the high-risk certs. And remember, OSHA actually requires retraining if site hazards change. That's under 1926.503. So keep that training current with the job itself. Fifth, run a mock inspection. Pretend OSHA just walked in and announced. Can you pull up instant reports? Can your supervisors verify credentials on the spot for a random crew member? Can you address any red flags quickly? Especially for those high-hazard roles, riggers, crane operators, electricians. Practice makes perfect, and speed matters in a real audit. And finally, number 6, build in a renewal buffer. Don't wait until the last day. Set a company policy, maybe a 30-day internal deadline before the actual expiry date with mandatory follow-ups. That buffer prevents one person's oversight from shutting down a whole crew because a key cert lapsed yesterday.
That really sums it up. This whole process, compliance. It isn't just, optional paperwork you tack onto the real work. It's fundamental. It's the shield that protects a thriving, productive site. When you manage these credentials proactively, you're not just protecting lives from danger, you're also protecting your company's bottom line from completely unnecessary hits.
Absolutely. I mean, if the sources tell us plain as day that human error causes 30% of these lapses, and we know from cases like Seattle that one single expired card can lead to $1.2 million in fines plus lawsuits,
Right.
then the risk just hiding there in an unmanaged spreadsheet or a dusty file cabinet, it's truly massive. And importantly, it's almost entirely avoidable with the right tools and processes.
Exactly. So maybe we leave you with this final thought, a question to mull over based on everything we've unpacked today. If you had to pick one high-stakes certification on your team's list right now, this minute, to absolutely prove it's current and compliant, which one would you check first?